This is Man Hungry by Alan Marshall, a pen name of Donald Westlake. I'm continuing reading these early sex novels. This one was written in 1959. It's the third edition. I'm continuing to read them to understand the evolution of the writing style of Donald Westlake. These early novels are so vapid, superficial, and uninteresting that it is painful to continue plowing through them. I'm not quite sure how much longer I can do it. But there are some rewards of insight. I chose this edition, the third edition, mainly for the cover, because I'm interested in pulp art and the aspects of marketing. Now, myself, being a rather unattractive person, in other words, I'm average. Most people, the fact is, are not very attractive. And here you have a guy and woman who would be considered model quality. The idea here is that someone like myself would project my image onto this man and believe, wow, this could be me. I could get a woman of this caliber. So very manipulative and very interesting on our society's construction of the ideal type. Also, I just love the angle here. That bookshelf is incredible. I'd love to have a long bookcase like that over a couch. The couch is quite similar to what I have. And if you look at that radio up on top, that's just amazing. The early editions of this book were more tawdry on their cover. This almost looks like it could be a reasonably respectable novel if you were caught reading it in the airport, for instance. The other thing that is interesting to me about this book is if you want to understand the psychology of the current spate of rapists and sex abusers that are in the news, Harvey Weinstein, Bill Clinton, of course, Mark Halperin in the news today, well-known NBC commentator and political analyst, that comedian, what's his name, Bill Cosby. It seems like there's a very disturbed, dysfunctional mental attitude of men who came of age in the 50s and 60s, although it's now even coming out that the first president, George Bush, is a serial sex abuser. But the connection to this book is that I think the book has to reflect the attitudes of the time. And so you can see here an excerpt is at the beginning. Dan, please don't. Or please don't. There is a description here of some couple, I guess it's them, fondling in a lusty fashion. He kissed her breasts, stroked the inside of her thigh, pushing the skirt up to her hips. But when he tried to push her down on the sofa, her eyes opened and she whispered, "No, please, Dan, don't." "The hell I won't," he said huskily. "You've let me go too far to back out now." Now you can imagine Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby, Bill Clinton, Mark Halperin, and the slate of others who are in the news saying the same thing based on all news reports that I've read anyway. And so there was something in the society at the time, this was written again in 1962, that validated that a man's behavior is to be assertive in the sense that we now understand to be abusive. But at the time, this is how men were taught to behave. At least that's a theory. Were men taught to behave in a certain fashion, or are they simply evil abusers? Women certainly were viewed as commodities. There have been some very poignant and horrific articles recently on slave owners who would consistently rape their slaves, like Thomas Jefferson did. And the reason they could do such a thing is because slaves were, of course, commodities. And so they were property, and they were treated as property. Women are another aspect of a commodity. And I think we're at a point in time that we'll look back on as being an historical turning point where women have asserted their own identity to a certain extent beyond being perceived as commodities. But this book, Man Hungry, is an interesting cultural artifact for understanding the attitudes of the time and the attitudes that have extended through the likes of Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby, and Mark Halperin.